Hello, welcome to Rachel Paints Poorly. My name is Rachel and I paint poorly. Today we are making a vintage recipe, the chocolate dream cake from Good Eating Morning, Noon, and Night, published in 1950 by the Robin Hood Flour International Milling Company. As you can imagine, every recipe uses flour in one way or another, mostly in baked goods like breads, cakes, pies, cookies, desserts, and other sweets, but there are some savory dishes as well. We're going to be making something sweet. The previous two recipes were desserts, and the first vintage recipe we made here was a vile green blob masquerading as a dessert, so I feel like we have a theme here that's really only been on an upwards trajectory. No reason to stop now. I settled on the chocolate dream cake mainly because it seemed a bit more complicated and involved than the other recipes, but also because it has a color photograph I can replicate. The decorating instructions are the bare minimum at best, and the little doodle accompanying the recipe definitely isn't cutting it. While we're on the subject of doodles, most, but not all, of the recipes have one, and they are fairly standard for what one would expect to find in a cookbook published in 1950. Happy scenes of familial domesticity, people preparing food, people eating food, cringe-inducing caricatures. Nothing too shocking there, but there's also this weird anthropomorphization of the food itself, in which the food characters are living their best lives, while also simultaneously being ruthlessly hunted and brutally murdered by people, presumably by the readers ourselves. I can't imagine who that's supposed to appeal to. One last little bit about the chocolate dream cake and then we'll get started. It consists of 3 parts: the cake, the filling, and the icing. From the color photograph, it looks like they dyed the icing blue because why not? Good for you, Rita. And also, they decorated the top with 8 circles of what I think must be the leftover filling. With the yellow cake plate, it all looks quite charming, so I decided to find and use a yellow cake plate too. And y'all, look at this. I almost couldn't believe it, but here it is, and I'm like 99.99% sure this is the same cake plate used in the Photoshop. So feast your eyes on this extra bit of vintage recipe fun. Hopefully I don't mess it up. And so, without further ado, let's get started, shall we? Okay, well, here it is in all of its glory. A few things I want to make note of before I eat this bad boy. First, I think that the color turned out really well. The blue icing is basically perfect, and I think that the yellow turned out really well as well. One thing that I am disappointed with is the filling layer. I think it didn't get hot enough in the double boiler, because when I put the remaining filling into the pot and just cooked it over the stovetop as was, it heated up and it thickened the way I think it was supposed to. Hopefully that doesn't affect the way that it tastes too much, but we'll see. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is that the cake itself doesn't seem as dark and chocolatey as other chocolate cakes that I've had, using like Hershey's cocoa powder or something like that, because it only had four squares of chocolate. It only had 4 squares of chocolate, which I don't really think is enough, but we'll see. So, all right, here we go. Try to get a bite with icing, filling, and chocolate cake. This is a huge bite, but fortunately for me, I have a huge mouth. Oh, that is weird. I think it's the almonds right here. Try to get just the cake. It doesn't really taste like anything. It doesn't. It tastes maybe like flour. A very dense flour. Oh, that's strange. It also doesn't have butter in it. It calls for shortening. So I think that contributes to the fact that it doesn't really have much of a flavor. It's just very plain. It needs the filling because it sweetens it up and gives it a bit of flavor in the almonds. The icing, it's very light and it's sweet because it has those two different, it has brown sugar and white sugar in it. It's very sweet, it's very light because there's no butter in it. So it's not a buttercream, it's almost like a meringue, a sweetened meringue that hasn't been toasted or cooked on the top. Overall, there's nothing offensive about it. It's not bad. It doesn't have any overpowering flavors. It doesn't make me recoil in horror. It's not bad. But there's really nothing to say about it. It doesn't stand out in any particular way. I can't put it in my mouth and say, I'm really tasting this, that, or the other, except almonds. It doesn't really make much of an impression. If this was sitting out at a buffet, I might be tempted to taste some, and just a little bit, and then I would probably finish it and then move on to like a brownie or something. If you're craving chocolate, this ain't it. If you're craving an interesting and unusual dessert item from the 1950s, go for it. Except I would add more chocolate to the cake and I would boil the filling on the stove in a stovetop instead of using the double boiler so it can get hot enough so it actually will start to thicken. I would leave the icing. The icing, I think, is unique enough compared to what we're used to today that it's fun, it's tasty, and it's inoffensive, and I like the color. I would 100% keep it blue. There's an almond stuck in my throat. We're definitely getting rid of the almonds. Oh. And there you have it, the 1950 chocolate dream cake. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye. Are you coming inside? Come on. Good job.
Now we know where all the pictures from the end.
I see one line up
Now I know
in the
about
sky.
the elbow.
Yes, to the south of me. Yes. And it looks like a sunset. It's lights
Wouldn't it
on.
be funny if you weren't trick-or-treating around this? It was like going home.
Amazing. Yeah.